Good morning, everybody. I'm trying something a little bit different this morning. I have another camera here, and so not only are you going to get to see what's on the screen, you're going to see my face if you go look at the YouTube video. It's supposed to be better. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, before we move on, fun with charts. Charts tell all sorts of stories. And once you figure out what you want to do, you can do it. Here's a pretty impressive chart. Apple last week had a big presentation, and Tim Cook, the guy who runs Apple now, was up there talking about this and saying, "Look at us, we're great, right? You look at that chart and everything looks really great. We're selling, iPhones as fast as we can make them. That's one story. But if you rearrange the data into a slightly different order, you can make this chart. There. And if you look at on a quarter-by-quarter basis, Apple sales have been declining for the last 3 quarters. So this is the chart that they don't want you to see. But the point here is the charts are a very powerful tool. They can give all sorts of impressions, and depending on how you put the data together, you can tell any kind of story you want. It's easy enough to do that sort of stuff with charts. All right, anyway. I just love that. So let's talk about today and tomorrow and next week. Next week, in here, is exam time. All right, exam 1. It'll cover the first 5 tutorials in the textbook, including the stuff from today. The format, if you're curious what they look like, in my outbox, there's a folder called Practice. And these exam 1s, A, B, and C, are from 3 different semesters. And there's also a set of answers on them, too, if you want to look at them. I'm just going to pick one here at random. You'll get a similar workbook, but it'll have different questions in it. But it'll be covering the same material, essentially. You'll have a cover sheet, and then you'll have tabs with questions on them. There'll be some questions at the top for you to answer, and then there'll be data for you down here. And you do all your work down here. Okay. And then when you get this one done, you go on to the next sheet. You fill out the whole thing. When you're done, you put it in the Dropbox in My Courses, and that's it. Okay. So if you want to practice for the exam, there'll be at least 3 of them in that practice folder for you to do. I don't know. Any questions about the exam? It'll be an open book, open internet, open help system. Let me caution you about that. If you think you can come in here and look up all the answers you need to get this done, you're not going to get halfway through the exam. Almost nobody finishes ahead of time on my exams. All right. You're going to be in here the whole time. You're going to be very busy working on it. If you have to stop and look up more than a few things, you're simply going to run out of time. Okay. So even though I say you can bring your textbook, I know from past experience watching students do this stuff, the ones who spend time flipping through the textbook are the ones who don't do very well on the exam. Okay? Any other questions? Anything else you want to know about it? Yes?
Are the questions like questions of this, like in the textbook?
Well, they'll be more like this than in the textbook.
Oh, okay.
They'll be the textbook. It gives you too much information. These you really got to know what you're doing, and they're kind of open-ended, and the data will have to be rearranged, and you'll have to do all sorts of stuff. But in the end, you'll end up using everything we've done in the labs, and then the homeworks tend to reinforce what we do in the labs. Okay? Any other questions about this? All right, so let's go on to today's stuff. I'll do this. Here we go. Okay. So last week we did charts, which is a great way to summarize data and show the overall pattern of how things, is business good, is business not so good, whatever, right? I'm going to give you another set of tools today that allow you to, again, to look at patterns in the data, but with a little bit more detail, like, which month is really our best month for sales and which is our worst month, who our best customers are, who our worst customers are. Again, summarizing large amounts of data to make sense out of it. So only one function, the subtotal function we'll get to, and a whole bunch of tools. You got an assignment that will be due at the beginning of next lab. It's the 4 case problems from the end of this tutorial. It's good practice for the exam because this stuff will be on the exam. All right, so let's go on. First tool, the simplest tool, or a set of tools. I've got quite a few rows of data here. It's supposed to be, I believe, 4 states: Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, from 2011, 2012, and up to August of 2013. But somehow, whoever gave it to me, it's all jumbled up, and I want to fix it, and I want to do stuff with it. So I want to sort this data. I'm going to sort it on multiple columns, so I can do something with it. Now, the one trick I'm going to rely on all day is I'm going to use a data region. So I want to make sure that I have column headers on all my columns and no blank rows, no blank columns in there, because it just makes my life easier, the things I want to do. So that's already set up. So to sort, I come over here on the ribbon where it says sort, and I got to do a custom sort because I want to sort on more than one column. So the first thing the first way I want to organize the data is by state. So I want all Connecticut's together and then all of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and so on. So I just say sort by state, and it's going to sort it in alphabetical order for me, A to Z, great. And then I'm going to tell it to, within each state, I want 2011, then 2012, and 2013, so I'll pick year. And go from smallest to largest, which is what I want. If I wanted to put them in reverse order, I could just come over here and say largest to smallest. But then within each year, I'd like to have it go January, February, March, in chronological order. So I add another level, and here I pick month, and now it says A to Z. And so if I were to leave it this way, the first month in that year would be April, and then the next month would be June, is that right? August. April, August, so on. It's going to come in a crazy way. We do not think about time being in alphabetical order, right? But Excel knows dates, so it's not a big thing here. We can fix this. Over here on this drop-down, next to the A to the Z, custom list. It's already got the custom list that we need. You can just pick it, January, February, the abbreviations, because that's what the data is, right? And it's going to sort them in that particular order. You can create your own custom list here. So if you had a lot of, educational data where you had like freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, you could create a list in there that said freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and you could tell it to sort it that way, and it would come out the way that we typically think of those categories, right? Nobody thinks about, it'd be freshman, senior, sophomore. I don't know. It's crazy. So anyway, you can build your own list here. Okay. And then just say OK. And now my data is nicely sorted. Okay, it's organized. And I can do what I want to do with it. Okay. Now, if I start scrolling down through this, I lose my column headers. And with only a few columns here, I can probably remember that I've got these 3 different products, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. I can probably remember which is which. But suppose I had 30 columns. Then it gets so much harder to remember what's in column J versus column G and stuff like that, right? So a trick you can do on the ribbon up here under the View tab, you can freeze the top row. And all that does is just leaves it on the screen no matter how far you scroll down. So it saves you from having to memorize what's in each column. That's a small trick, but it's a very useful trick, I think. All right. You can do, if this, again, think of this was, we had 40 columns of data here. And in the first column, we had like customer ID number, and we wanted to keep that on the screen at all times, so as we scroll off to the right, it doesn't drop off. You can, under that freeze panes, you can tell it to freeze the first column. It's the same idea here, so no matter how far you scroll to the right, that first column is always going to be in the screen. That's all it does. You can still go into that. You can still modify it. You can put formulas in there. All it does is just keeps it on the screen no matter where you scroll to. Okay. You can take it one step further. Unfreeze that. I'm just going to pick C3. Okay. And when I tell it to freeze panes, it's going to freeze everything to the left of that and everything above that. So we'll just go in there again and say freeze panes this time. And so now no matter what I do, it's going to keep the first two columns on the screen and the top row on the screen. Okay. It's a nice feature. So I'm just going to set that back just to the top row like that. Okay. Okay. So that's that. Now, if I were trying to compare Connecticut to Pennsylvania, which is down at the bottom of this list, it's going to be a pain to scroll up and down, right? Do that and go back like that. Even if I use my control down arrow, take me to the bottom, control arrow or control up arrow takes me back to the top. It's still, I got to do all that sort of stuff. Well, you can split the screen. Now, it's not going to do you much good in here because the monitors aren't that big, but in business these days, people are using bigger and bigger monitors, and if you can split it that way. So I'm just going to pick, well, I'm going to go back to the top first. Control up arrow. And see, even that doesn't take me back. Okay. All right, it's all down. I'm going to pick some row. I went over there and just clicked on 18, so it highlighted the entire row. And then up here, on the View tab of the ribbon where it says Split, I'll just click that. And why didn't it do it? It's supposed to have, oh, it did split it up there. Why did it do it up there? There it is, okay. So now I've got two windows going here, and so I can scroll down through the bottom part and the top part of there, and I can click on the top part of this, and I can scroll through that and the bottom of this. So it's an easy way for me to compare two parts of that sheet. Okay. You can split it the other way if your data works that way. We'll unsplit it that way, and then I'll just pick column J, and I'll do split. And now I've got I can go left and right, and I can compare stuff side by side. Again, it's just a trick or a tool to help you look at this data and make sense out of it. You can take it one step further. First, I'm going to unsplit that. You can click on New Window, and then I just grab the top and drag, and then I can have two windows open like that, and then I can compare them like that if I wanted to, or I can go into View here, and I can say Arrange, and I can say horizontally, and OK. And now I can actually look at two different sheets at the same time in that workbook. So if I wanted to compare like sheet 1 with sheet 5, each one of these is independent, so down here I could just pick another sheet and go to that, and I can compare the two. Nice trick, I don't know. And then when you're done with one, you can just close one of the two, and you're back, all right? So if you had a big enough monitor, you could split it, and then you could open up two windows so you could have multiple things on the screen at the same time to look at. Okay, so let's go back to where I was under grouping. Here I am, okay. So freeze pane, split screen, multiple windows. All right. Now, there's one other tool. It's an old tool, but it's a useful tool. There's a grouping tool, a subtotal grouping tool that'll help us summarize this data. I've got my data region defined here. I'm going to just pick a cell in that region, doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go to the Data tab on the ribbon. And on the right-hand side where it says subtotal, We're going to want to select that. Okay. So at each change in state, it's going to insert a row for us. So when it goes from Connecticut to New Jersey, it's going to put a row in that table for us. And it's going to create a summary statistic. And it's going to use the sum as its statistic, and it's going to sum up the total for total. And if I wanted it for each one of the three products, I could just click on those two, like that. And we'll just say OK here. And when you scroll down, see, there's where Connecticut stops. So put that row in there for us. My columns aren't big enough to see them, so I'm going to resize them. And there they are. So that's my 2.5 year to 2+ year total for those three parts for each state. And there'll be one for each state. Okay. So then I can compare Connecticut's total with New Jersey's total and so on. I'm going to take this one step further. I'm going to do this same kind of thing again. So I'm going to pick a cell in that region. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go back to the subtotal a second time. And up here where it says at each change in, I'm going to put year in there now so that it's going to further subdivide Connecticut into three parts. It'll be 2011, 2012, 2013. So I'll pick year, and we'll use the sum there, and I can pick the same three that I had before. Now down here at the bottom, where it says replace current subtotals, make sure that's unchecked because we don't want to lose those. We want to add some new ones. And just say OK. And now at the end of each year, it inserted a new row for us. And we can go ahead and do what we want to do. All right. Now, notice on the left-hand side, there's some additional stuff now. It's turned that into an outline that you can collapse or expand to show just the kinds of data you want. So if I were to click on this number 3 up here, it's going to close down one level. And there's my totals. It's basically just showing me the totals. So for 2011, and then here's 2012 for Connecticut, and 2013 up to the end of August, so on and so forth, and then the same for the other states. All right. So if I had 50 states, this becomes really useful, because now I can compare state by state, don't have to do any scrolling, it's all right there for me. If I can roll this up higher, so if I click on 2 up here on the left-hand side, that collapses at one more level. So now I'm just looking at the totals by states. Okay. And then if I roll it up one more, it's just going to show me the grand totals. But I can expand these again, so if I just click on these pluses. So if I'm interested in Connecticut, for example, I would just click there. That shows me the 3 years, and I'm interested in 2012 for Connecticut. I could do that. So it gives you what's called a drill-down capability here. So you can come back down and see the actual years worth of data, right? And if you wanted to see more, you can do that. If you didn't want to see that one again, you just click here on this little minus, and you can roll that one up. Okay. So it's a nice little tool to do that sort of stuff. What else do I want to say about it? Nothing, I think. Okay. Any questions about these sorts of things? All right, so it's your turn. So on P1, there's some data here. You need to clean it up a little bit before you can do this sort of stuff. Again, I caution you, for my tricks to work, you want to have something at the top of each column. It makes life much simpler, so you're going to have to go through and modify this a little bit, and then go ahead and just answer the questions, and then we'll go on to something even better. All right?